Hey, Clemson family. Well, now that we know for sure Dabo Swinney is going to be back in 2024 in Clemson, let's go ahead and get into some of the players who are going to be back. The familiar faces we know, a lot of them very talented, a lot of them a big reason why Clemson has had winning records the last several years, a big finish to the 2023 season, and how they are going to take their talents into 2024 in Death Valley.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Do we know the basketball coach will be back for 2024-25? It's not looking good right now. They're playing terrible basketball. They've lost 4 out of 5. We'll talk about that later. Let's focus on the positives. And one Mr. Phil Mafah is coming back to the Tigers for the 2024 season. I'm so excited about Mafah being back. I'm such a big fan of his. Being with Ben being around the team the last several years and being around him and being around Will Shipley, and he's become a huge fan of both of those guys. Ben said they used to give him group hugs downtown when they would see downtown. So big fan of those guys. But Will Shipley's going to the NFL. That's great for him. I think it's the right move for him. All that stuff's true, and I think Phil Mafah made the right decision coming back for the 2024 season for Clemson. And Bill, it feels like he's going to be the featured back, right? I think there's good backs on the team, but this feels like this is Phil Mafah's team from the running back slot for 2024.
Yep, he's Daniel Shirley. I'm Bill Zimmerman. This is the Reign Supreme Alway podcast. We might be right around episode 100. Finally, I've referenced that a few times. I never keep count, but we have been around. We are sticking with you through the football off season, going through basketball, going through baseball, softball. Uh, we will try to keep on top of the highlights of all of that for you and break down what you need to know. YouTube.com/Clemson Kickoff. Go ahead and give us a subscribe. We will keep you up on all of it. And yeah, I do think that this can be Phil Mafah's football team in 2024. I also think it really needs to be Cade Klubnik's team in 2024. It's very traditional that an offense and a team is really run by its quarterback. I think that's what guys expect. But I do think that Mafah, although not flawless, is less mistake prone than Cade Klubnik. And until we see otherwise, there's every reason to think that he's going to be that kind of Wayne Gallman presence, that Andre Ellington kind of presence, really being the focus of the offense. We'll see who emerges behind him. There are some guys coming back who we saw last year. Jay Haynes will be one of them. Keith Adams Jr. will be another. Skill position wise, you really need Cade Klubnik to start opening things up. He will be the starter again. Reserve Paul Tyson will be back again. He will be the number 2 most likely. Christopher Vizina, I believe he prefers to go by, will also be in the battle for that number 2 job. Whoever is playing has got to do a better job of getting the ball to the receivers. And I am excited about Tyler Brown coming back and Antonio Williams being back, and hopefully the 2 of those guys having a full and healthy season together, along with Troy Stellato, who's going to be back. There's going to be a freshman infusion of talent as well, 2 really big recruits coming in, and Bryant Wesco and TJ Moore. But I am excited about the 3 who are coming back if those freshmen need time. And then Adam Randall, also in that mix, very capable guy, someone they've trusted to go to in third down situations. A lot of skill position talent coming back, and I agree with you. Mafah really is the standout among them. Probably could have gone to the NFL if he had really wanted to, but now has this chance to earn the spotlight, carrying the ball and being the primary guy there, earning those tough yards, and then sometimes, busting out a chunk play as well. Very capable in that regard. And that's why, even though his physique is different than Wayne Gallman, his running style reminds me of Gallman, and the results remind me of Gallman. And he was able to carry this team to a national championship on the ground.
You look at the numbers for Phil Mafah. Bill, they won their last 5 games, right, of this season. They were 4-4. They won their last 5 games. Here are the numbers for Phil Mafah in those 5 games. Notre Dame, 36 carries, 186 yards, 2 touchdowns. That was really the game, I think, where you saw, okay, this guy can be a featured back. Will Shipley was hurt. He didn't play, had the concussion the week before against NC State, which should have been targeting. It wasn't called. And Phil Mafah took over. The next week, Georgia Tech, 17 carries, 96 yards. North Carolina, 23 carries, 84 yards. The average was a little bit down, but he scores a touchdown. South Carolina, 19 carries, 89 yards. And then the capper, Kentucky, he had 71 yards. You say, well, that's not that much. He only had 11 carries, 6.5 yards a carry, and 4 touchdowns. So, you look at those last 5 games, he scored 7 of his 13 touchdowns for the season in those games. And I just really feel like, look, it's great that if Shipley would have come back, it would have been huge to have both of them. But it's big to have Phil Mafah back and have him lead that group. I like the other backs. I do. I think there's some speed there. I think they need to inject some speed into the running game. I think the team is missing that. That not that these guys are Travis Etienne or anything like that, but there needs to be that kind of burst of speed that we haven't seen the last couple of years. So I like that the running backs who are there. I like the guys that are coming back offensively. And David Hood wrote a piece on TigerNet this morning. I believe it was when it came out, or yesterday morning. Sorry, on the 16th, about the players who redshirted, who we can't overlook those guys, right? I mean, sometimes we forget about those guys, like they're almost not part of the team, like a Mink Kelly or somebody like that.
Tink Kelly.
Tink Kelly. I'm sorry. What did I say? Tink Kelly. Sorry.
Jarvis Green, another one. Yep.
Moose and Kelly. I'm got his name and his nickname mixed up, but yeah, Jarvis Green. I mean, those kinds of guys. If Ian Reed can get healthy from whatever the sickness was that he was going through during the season, Vic Burley. I mean, Vic Burley was going to play a lot before he got hurt. So we can't forget about those guys, because those guys are kind of, they're kind of forgotten because they're not seen on the field during a lot of the game. And I think they're going to have an impact as well. So every team loses players. They lost players to the draft. They've lost players to the portal. They probably will lose more players to the portal. The freshman group is going to add something. Sammy Brown, those guys are going to play. But there is a lot of talent coming back for this team. And we saw what this team can be, Bill, if it doesn't turn the ball over. The last 5 games, they didn't turn it over as much. They weren't perfect, but they didn't turn it over as much. And we saw what this team can be if it doesn't turn the ball over. And you're right about Klubnik. I think he's still got to clean some stuff up. He's got to settle down in the pocket. But if he can do that and they don't turn the ball over and they feature Phil Mafah and Jake Brennan-Stoll, and Adam Randall had a good game in the bowl game. He had a huge 3rd down catch in the 4th quarter. So there is plenty of talent to get this done and improve offensively. And if they improve offensively, the defense is good enough that they can be right back in the hunt to win the ACC title, be in the playoff, and do some special things in 2024.
Yep. And another freshman coming in I want to mention, I think he might have a solid chance to figure prominently as running back, David Ezeamame. We'll get more. We've done a signing day recap. You can go back and check that out at youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. And then I think after the spring game, probably we'll get more into the freshmen and what we saw out of that spring game and what we might be able to forecast for the guys who could be coming on in August, or maybe the guys who didn't get in as much in that spring game but still have a lot of talent. Up front, I think, is going to be really, really key for Klubnik to take that step forward that you and I are talking about at quarterback. You mentioned Ian Reed might be someone who can maybe isn't really what we think of as a guy coming back, because we didn't see him out there on the field, a chance to really get a spotlight out there. But you see 4 guys coming back who are going to be key. Tristan Lee and Blake Miller at the tackles. I always want to call him Bobby Miller because I'm a Dodgers fan and they got the starter in the rotation. Sunday, I'm going to mess it up. I almost did it right there. Blake Miller, right tackle. We should have Walker Parks back if he can get healthy. And then Marcus Tate, I believe, will be back again on the left side at guard. You've got Harris Sewell, who's got experience. You've got Colin Sadler, who's got experience. You would hope that someone who's been around the program a long time, like Dietrich Pennington, can step up and find a way to contribute. Ryan Linthicum maybe could be a guy step up and contribute at center. Definitely have to find a replacement snapping the ball and calling the signals and taking on nose guards and at the center position. Someone needs to step up or slide over and find a way to make that happen. And then tight end, you mentioned Brenning Stool. I am really high on Josh Sapp. I have been for quite some time. He looked good and capable and natural against Kentucky. And then
Yep.
Olson Pat Henry, you see with a lot of talent, maybe doesn't have that natural feel yet that Josh Sapp does, but you can see why he was a lauded recruit there as well. Those guys have to block. Those guys have to add to the blocking game as well. And that's going to be, I think, a key point for Kyle Richardson. The bigger factor really is going to be what Matt Luke can do with those returning offensive linemen. What can he find in their 2023 tape that he can say, all right, here's where we get better. Here are your strengths. Here are the things you got to cling to. But here's maybe a tip on that first step, and knowing that on this play call, your first step has to be super quick in this direction, or knowing that with this play call, here's your assignment and you've got to find a way to get in front of this guy no matter what it takes, no matter if he stunts. Like, you have to own this guy or own this space and find who's coming into that space. He's got to work those things out. I can't do it from here. But there's really no one better qualified than Matt Luke, and I think he's just a fabulous hire, worth the money that they spent to bring him in. Unfortunately, have to say worth the trouble of letting a good Clemson guy go, and Thomas Austin, who I have every confidence is going to land on his feet, have a bright future ahead. That group up front can make everything click a little better. It can give Mafah more breakaway runs. It can give Klubnik better vision down the field. You and I talk about how many times Klubnik didn't see a guy open. Well, if there's no passing lane where it's supposed to be for him to
Yep.
make that read, it makes it tougher. And, a lot of things are the quarterback's responsibility, but there are things that the offensive line can do to make those responsibilities easier to handle. And then either something's going to prove to be the bigger factor, either a better offensive line thanks to Matt Luke in front of him, or a second year with Garrett Riley as the offensive coordinator, same terminology, same system, and being able to really lock in and say, all right, here's what I learned last year, and that's got to be the baseline, and I've got to learn X things on top of that, whether that's better backfield vision, whether downfield vision, understanding the offense better, being more willing to stick to the play call and trust what the older and more experienced Garrett Riley is calling and saying, definitely do this, and going out and executing that. That's got to happen, right?
Yeah, it does. I think it's all a process, right? Every quarterback is a product of his own talent, his own experience, the players around him, the coaching. Look, we want to talk about quarterbacks. You have to factor all of that stuff in. And if you ignore it, you're just missing the point. I think the Luke hire is as big a hire as Dabo's made outside of Brent Venables. I do. I think
Wow.
the Brent Venables hire changed the program, changed the trajectory of the program. And I think the Luke hire, if we ranked the Dabo Swinney hires of assistant coaches since he became the head coach, that sounds like a damn good episode of the podcast. So let's get to work on it. But if we did that, I would put Brent Venables 1 and I would have Matt Luke 2. Now we've got to see if it works out, but I'm projecting, of course. We have the evidence of Brent Venables. We don't have any yet from Matt Luke. I would put Nick Eason up there. I would put Mike Reed up there. I would put some others up there as well. But
Chad
I
Morris.
think Chad Morris, right? Chad,
Yeah.
absolutely. How can you forget Chad Morris? Tony Elliott, those guys, Jeff Scott, all of those guys.
Yeah.
But I think Brent Venables is number 1. I don't think that's debatable.
Right.
But I think Matt Luke could be number 2
Yeah.
5 years from now.
Right.
And
He might not earn that standing in one season because
right.
offensive lines everywhere are more of a slow build than an
Yeah.
instant turnaround.
Right. I'm
Yeah.
not talking about today in January of 2024. But I
Yeah.
mean, 5 years from now, when we look back, we could say, dang, and because that's what we did with Venables, right? I mean, we didn't know Brent Venables was going to do what he did at Clemson with that defense, but I think that could play out.
Yep.
For 2024, it was huge to get him. And I think that is the entire key for the entire team. I absolutely do. And you know what I think about offensive line play anyway. I mean, I think it's the key for any good team.
Sure.
You have to have at least solid offensive line play to be a good team. Clemson's never had great offensive line play in this run since Dabo's been the head coach. They haven't. They had great offensive play on line play when we were growing up in the late
And
70s and early and throughout the 80s. They haven't had it since. And they haven't had it in 2 national championship teams. But they can have it with Matt Luke. I don't have a doubt in my mind about that because of his experience and everything he brings to the table. So I think he's that line, that group, figuring out that group is the entire key for the 2024 season for this team having any kind of a special year.
Yep. We are on Twitter. We are on Instagram. We are on Threads. Not using that one as much, admittedly. Clemson Kickoff. Go find us on all those platforms. We will keep you posted in between episodes and let you know when we have new episodes back. Of course, you want to subscribe at youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. That is the fastest way to know we're coming at you with something new. Let's do this. Let's get into basketball. We have to do it. It can't all be fun and immediate optimism. As you mentioned at the outset, Clemson in a rut for sure under Brad Brownell. Not the first time we've seen this. Not the first time you see this across college basketball, really, right? I mean, Terrence Oglesby, I mentioned this in an earlier episode. He mentions that, teams lose games, teams go through slumps. And what I said in that point is, well, then it's better that it's happening now in January. Hopefully they can get their footing under them. Right now, though, it is just looking like that initial loss to Memphis put some things on tape. Teams know what they're doing to take Clemson on. They can game plan for them, including most recently rookie head coach Damon Stoudemire at Georgia Tech, who was able to pull out somehow, some way, a very late comeback and then double overtime victory against the Tigers last night as we record this on Wednesday afternoon. And Daniel, I know you were watching that game pretty closely. I was on the road handling something, so let us have it.
Ugly. I mean, ugly. I don't. And, look, we said this last week about T.O. We love T.O. T.O. knows, Terrence Oglesby knows more about basketball than we'll ever know. He was one of the greatest shooters Clemson's ever had. This isn't about this season. This is about 14 seasons. And this is about the quick starts and then the collapses. And you can almost set your calendar by it. You absolutely can. And I shared the tweet with you of the years where they start off strong and then fall apart. And they did it last year. They started great last year and they didn't quote fall apart, but they played so poorly the second half of the season. They didn't make the NCAA tournament with 14 ACC wins. That's almost impossible to do. And Bill, they are 2-4 in the ACC. They've lost 2 games at home where they have, what were they? The North Carolina game, they were 1 for 18 on threes. Last night, they were 3 for 20. 3 for 21, I'm sorry. So they've lost 2 ACC games where they've made 4 3-pointers out of 40-plus attempts at home. And then on the road, they can't defend. Look at the Miami game, the Virginia Tech game. They just cannot defend at home. So this isn't one thing or another. This is a bad offensive team or a bad defensive team. This team is in a funk, and I don't know how they get out of it. Do you have any confidence they're going to go to Florida State and win Saturday?
Why would I?
I don't. Yeah,
I mean, not right now. Maybe at
No.
another time of the year, sure, I would feel that way because
Yes.
I've seen how good this team can be. Right now, this team is not in that level of form.
But even when they were winning, they weren't playing good defense. And people want to quote these stats to me about their defense. You can make stats say whatever you want to say. Watch them play. They can't defend the ball out top. Okay? So then, and I saw a tweet said every player on the Clemson court right now can get beat by the dribbler, by the ball handler. That is not good. If you don't know basketball, that's not good. But they get beat out top by the ball handler. Bill. It breaks down the defense because somebody has to rotate, and then they're in scramble mode, and then they give up wide open threes. And you cannot survive like that. You cannot have a championship team that can't defend. You just can't. It's not going to happen unless you can score 100 points a game. And they made 3 out of 21 3-pointers last night. That's not it's they're in trouble. They are in legitimate trouble. They still have to play Duke. They still have to play at North Carolina. That's 2 more losses. I mean, they're not I don't see them beating NC State. I don't see them beating Wake Forest. So there's 8 in the conference. I mean, this team is in some deep trouble. And this is not just me ranting about this coaching staff or this coach. And people know what I think. I think there should have been a change 4 years ago, or 3 years ago, or 2 years ago.
Or last year.
Or last year. That's fine. You can say, Daniel, that you just don't like the coach. That's not true. I was a huge fan of Brad Brownell when he got the job. I thought the first 3 or 4 years we're seeing a different kind of a team. I thought it was going to work, but it hasn't worked, and it's not working. And it's not. I don't know why you bang your head up against the wall for 14 years and think something's going to change.
Yeah.
And again, so I'm telling you, I really have huge doubts whether this team makes the NCAA tournament.
And that's fair.
And this was a team that 2 weeks ago was a 2 or 3 seed in all the bracketology. And now it looks like a team that has lost all of its mojo, all of its confidence, all of its rhythm, whatever you want to call it. And they don't look like an NCAA tournament team now.
Yep. PJ Hall, a chance to be ACC Player of the Year, 19.4 points per game, 6.5 rebounds per game. He was 31 and 17 last night in the double overtime effort.
And you lost.
and it's a loss, yeah. So definitely gut check time. Sorry for the cliche, but I think it's really appropriate for the Tigers as they need to get this thing turned around and get some momentum. We will come at you with another episode next week, maybe sooner if we have to. Until then, I'm Bill Zimmerman.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Go Tigers.